Welcome to Power Up Your Practice, the go-to podcast for law firm owners and managing attorneys working on the business, not in it. I'm Ruby Powers, your guide into the heart of law practice management, bringing your insights from leading legal minds, trailblazing attorneys, and expert guests who provide practical perspectives on running your firm more effectively and efficiently. And before we dive in, I'm thrilled to announce that my latest book, Power Up Your Practice, is out and available on Amazon. It's packed with actionable advice for growing a successful law firm. Be sure to grab your copy today. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter for exclusive tips and resources. And if you're enjoying this podcast, we love your reviews. They help us reach more attorneys like you who are striving to build the practice of their dreams. Prepare to open your mind, be inspired, and power up your practice to the next level. Hi, everyone. This is Ruby Powers, your companion through the ever-evolving landscape of law practice management. And I'm excited to have on today's episode, Brian Glass. And his LinkedIn bio is quite, I'd love to hear more about this. I help lawyers escape mediocre lives, raising 3 boys, that must be exciting, and largest car crash verdict in Virginia, 2022. But other than that, I'm looking forward to learning more about him. We met at Elect Summit not too long ago, and then found out later that we both were getting books out around the same time. So that, and have podcasts. So looking forward to getting to know you a little bit more, and really wanted to focus a lot on marketing as well. So Brian, tell us a little bit more about yourself, and welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. You and I are following the exact same playbook, it seems. So I have an auto accident practice in Fairfax, Virginia, which is about 30 minutes outside of DC. It's my dad and I joined the firm in 2019 after spending the first 10 or 11 years of my career practicing across town, kind of sort of competing with him, although he didn't really have an auto accident practice. They were more medical malpractice and long-term disability appeals. So I came over here in 2019. We have 5 lawyers at the firm now, about 18 team members, and an additional 5 people overseas. And then most importantly, like at home, I've got 3 boys. So I've really designed a practice where I can leave the office in spring, and in the fall at 4 o'clock, I cut out and I go coach youth soccer and youth baseball, which I'm really passionate about. So, and on the weekends, you can find me on a sports field somewhere.
Awesome. So I get the point about the work-life balance and being able to create a life that you really enjoy. So that definitely resonates with a lot of our listeners who are law firm owners, partners, managing attorneys, and trying to create that balance that they want. So, but you're doing a lot in the marketing space. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that and what you're up to there?
Yeah. So a couple of things. My dad and I also run a company called Great Legal Marketing, which is a little bit of a misnomer because it's not truly like we teach marketing, yes, but that's not truly what it's about. Really, it's about designing the kind of firm that you actually want to show up to on a Monday morning, right? But we've put out a new book called Renegade Lawyer Marketing, just came out a couple of weeks ago, that's about how lawyers in 2024 working in solo and small practices like we are can compete against the 800-pound gorillas like the Morgan & Morgans in my industry without having to spend a ton of money on Google, by working with grassroots methods like newsletters, e-newsletters, and cultivating referral relationships with people in your market who come into contact with your clients before you ever do. So one of the things that we did in 2024, Ruby, is we shut off actually all of our digital marketing spend. We're spending some money, we have a website, obviously. We're doing some SEO coaching with Jason Hennessy, but we turned off all of our pay-per-click, we turned off all of our LSAs, and we rerouted all of that money into a referral relationship manager whose only job is to get us lunches, coffees, and take care of the people that take care of us by sending their clients to us.
So let's just define some things like pay-per-click. That's sort of like the Google ads or paid ads. And then what are LSAs for people listening?
LSAs is essentially pay-per-click, but instead of driving the click to a landing page website where somebody finds out more about you, drives them directly to a call to your office, right? So when you see a Google My Business profile and there's an option to call directly from there, often that can be a paid LSA. And anytime, if you search like injury lawyer near me, you're going to see at the top 3 will be names of a lawyer, a tagline, and just like a phone icon, right? And the interesting thing is that Google doesn't even show you anymore like the phone number. It's just you're dialing a direct Google tracking number directly into the office. Amazing attribution on that because you know exactly where the phone call came from. And in fact, there's a little whisper feature, right? When your receptionist picks up the phone, says, "Hey, this is a call from Google local service ads," and then the caller comes through. So there's amazing attribution on it. And that's one of the things that we turned off.
Oh, wow. And so what did you say this was in 2022? What year did you
This
say?
year, earlier this year, we turned it off.
Oh, earlier this year. Oh, okay. Okay. And I mean, with like personal injury firms, I find like there's a lot of spend on marketing, like, because I think what my studies or what my research was like 10% of your revenue on marketing is probably sort of aggressive. But would you say personal injury spend, what percentage do you think they are more?
Depends on the size, right? So we actually just did this. And we're at about 8% spend on marketing. And that's if you include my marketing director's salary,
right?
Referral relationship management salary, newsletter, all that stuff, all that lumped in. We're at about 8%. And honestly, it depends on.
I think that's healthy.
I think it's healthy. Yeah. You would spend a much higher percentage if you were just getting started, or you might spend a much lower percent. But if you're just getting started and you're spending a lower percentage, you have to think about how much of my attorney time is better spent somewhere else.
Like the labor, exactly.
The labor cost, yeah, exactly.
So you're focusing more on the relationship. What was I forgot the word you said. The person who's helping you with the
relationship manager.
Relationship manager, and that's someone internally or your okay.
Yeah, you'll love this. So she's formerly our director of happiness. And her story is that she began to work for us in about 2020 as a legal assistant in the auto accident practice. And she wouldn't mind me telling you she wasn't the world's best legal assistant, because a lot of what that job entails is asking a doctor's office repeatedly, send us a medical record, send us a medical records, setting depositions with people who sometimes don't want a deposition set. There's a lot of like almost combative is not the right word, but there's a lot of friction in that position. And she's one of these people that just wants to make everybody feel good, right? Well, if I want to make you feel good, yeah, but I also need you to do the thing that I need you to do. So we moved her into a director of happiness position, which really was like receptionist and office manager. And if you ever came into contact with our office, like she just takes care of everybody. Like she knows the UPS guy's favorite snacks; those are always stocked. What the mailman drinks, that drink is always cold when he comes by, right? So all of the service providers for our office love her. And we were thinking, what's the next iteration of that? Because we had her at the front desk. Everybody who comes into contact with her loves her. And we thought, well, what if we put her in front of people who were referring us cases or people that we wanted to refer us cases? So that's what we did. Is we were like, how would you budget for this? We have this digital marketing spend that's probably not enough money to really be making an impact. Let's just turn that off, give her a raise, move somebody else into this receptionist position and let her run with it. So that's what we've done this year.
So I feel like we're almost like living parallel lives, but didn't know each other until like, what was that, September or something in some respect, because I too turned off my PPC this summer actually. And it was a huge leap of faith. I don't know how you guys felt, but like, I was like, it's like, I don't know what's a good analogy, but I was like, we can't turn it off. Oh my gosh, we're going to like shrivel up and die. And like the phone won't ring, because I was like so addicted to it since like I first learned about it back in like April 2010, and it was like a life changer back then. But I turned it off because I couldn't truly gauge where everybody was coming from. It was actually converting. And I really, what I did is I was putting that time and effort into building out my CRM. And what I've realized is that I'm still finishing that up, but what I realized is that the phone still rings and we're still doing fine. And like, I've been able to move that money to something else, I think that's better used for the firm. But what have you found since you did that? And was it scary to do it?
So you and I met at Lex Summit, and I was asked to speak at Lex Summit because of the kind things that I've been saying for the last year and a half about Lead Docket, which is that Lead Docket gave us um, the data that we needed in order to make the decision that we would be okay turning that stuff off. Again, we're a smaller firm, and our spend was not outrageous, and I don't think, in hindsight, that we were spending enough money to have enough data to do PPC really well. And the things that you have to do really well if you're doing pay-per-click advertising and spending a lot of money on it is the landing page has to be awesome, right? When somebody comes to the page, they have to do the next thing, either fill out your form or call you. Otherwise, you've wasted $75, $100, $150, whatever on the click, right? And then number two, you have to be amazing at answering the phones. And we were not. Like, we had an offshore virtual assistant who in hindsight was converting 60% or so of the cases that we actually wanted into clients. And so, again, when you're spending $150 to make a click happen, and then probably $250 to make a phone call happen, like you can only miss so many of those before you're breaking even and you go, well, PPC doesn't work, right? So that was it for us. We turned that off because we were converting on a much higher rate at people who were referred to us, which makes sense, right? If you give somebody my name, they have the social proof coming from you that I know what I'm doing, right?
Right.
And it buys my intake team a little bit more time to get back to them. Because what happens if somebody clicks on your ad and calls and you miss the call, right?
Yeah.
And they don't know you at all.
Right.
They're just on to the next person. But if they've been referred to Ruby, they're going to wait for Ruby, right?
Right.
And so I bought myself more time. And in a small firm, like, speed to lead is important, but you can't be all things to everybody. So that's really what we looked at, that data, and we said, okay, these phone calls are coming in. A lot of them are clients that we don't want anyway. We're spending money on them. And then we're missing a bunch of calls. Like, it's just, we were really lighting our money on fire because we weren't doing it well. And that's not to say that you can't do pay-per-click or local service ads really well and get a really high ROI, but we weren't good at it. And so we just turned it off.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, my plan is like to get my CRM all cleaned up because we moved it to a new case management software. Our CRM wasn't integrated with our old case management. So that's why I decided to invest in that so I could really tell where the leads were coming from. And then I was planning to integrate it back on to have diversified. But like, one of the things that I remember starting with pay-per-click back, let's say 6 months after starting my law firm, was that it sort of helped give me like new business that, I just showed up to the scene, I didn't have, I always remember those attorneys who were like, I don't advertise, I don't market, I don't, I just get business just falls from the trees. Okay. Well, the thing is, like, you have to start somewhere and you have to practice enough to like build the relationships and that to put all of your effort in just relationship building or word of mouth and everything, like, it takes time. So like, anyway, so what would you say to a person who's starting a practice like right now? Would you do what you're doing or would you do something?
I think what you said is completely fair. Is you have to appreciate what stage of life your practice is in. And if you're in a stage of life where you don't have a reputation in the community and you don't have connections, but you do have time, right? You can always answer the phone, right? And so that's perfect. And maybe it was even you answering the phone with somebody called. And lawyers, we're great can be great at selling ourselves to prospective clients. We were just in this gap where, like, we weren't doing the phones really well. We weren't doing PPC really well. We had an established referral network. We know that based on our data, like 65% of our cases and 80% of our money was coming from a mention by an actual human being somewhere anyway, right? Like, if you're an injury lawyer, if you look back over your portfolio, almost all of your largest cases are going to be because somebody recommended that you be there, right? But if you're at the beginning of your practice, 100%, right? Sometimes you have to pay for the leads to come in because you need the lights to come on. So I don't have a problem with that at all. It really is all of this is data driven, and you have it in your CRM, and we had it with lead dockets, like looking at numbers and then trying to understand what the numbers are telling you, and then making decisions based on that.
Right. So what are some of the things that you're doing now with the build, focusing on the relationship building?
Yeah. So we have the thing that we did in the spring that worked out really well for us was a chiropractor mailer letter. It's a 3-part mailer to all of the chiropractors within, I think, a 10-mile radius of my office. And there's lots. I think we sent 60 of these letters. And the pitch was, hey, you probably don't know that you're getting screwed by personal injury lawyers. Because if you're not familiar with this practice area, what tends to happen is lawyer gets the case in, and then takes too long to settle the case because they don't have good systems. If the case does settle, then they come back and they say, well, doctor, you need to take a 33% or a 50% reduction on your fee. And then the lawyer never shows like what actually was the result. So I've been going around educating chiropractors on what you should be asking for if somebody's coming to you and asking for a discount. Because our whole model is built on playing fair across the industry, right? Like I will always show you the settlement statement. I'll show you what the case settled for. I'll show you if I took a reduction or not. I'll show you all that stuff. And so we just went into the market and said like, hey, I don't know if you have this problem, but I've talked to a lot of other chiropractors and they do. If you have this problem and you feel like you're being taken advantage of, I'd love to take you to lunch and talk about it. Sent like 60 of those letters. I ended up having about 11 lunches, and 4 of those doctors turned into regular referral sources, right? And in our world, average case value is like $18,000 fee. And so if I'm getting 1 case a month from each of those referral sources, all of a sudden that's almost an $80,000 a month stream of revenue, right? That came from sending 60 letters and buying 11 lunches. I also have, because of that program, an invitation to speak next October to the Virginia Chiropractor Convention. I've been introduced because these guys, they want to help each other out, right?
Yeah.
Especially like somebody's not going to travel 45 miles to go see a doctor, but they're in networks of people who are not competitors because they're too far away, and they share information. So that's turned out to be a really high ROI program that we ran just by going and figuring out, hey, what kind of problems do these people have that we might be able to address?
So that's awesome. That's a good example of finding some connectors and having a really high return on investment, because like I think when people are like, oh, okay, so I'm going to go to a whole bunch of happy hours or lunches and meetings, like if you just do it haphazardly and you're not really targeted, you can feel, I've talked to lots of lawyers that are like, I feel like I'm just going to events all the time, but I don't really know what I'm getting out of it. And like, maybe I'd be better spent just being in the office and working or something like that. But you mentioned before we were talking about newsletters, and I'm a big fan of newsletters. So how do you use it, and how is that working for you?
Yeah, so we are running currently 2 newsletters. We have a monthly newsletter to firm clients and referral sources. It's grown to like 8 pages now. It's mostly written by my staff. I have a page and a half. My dad has a page and a half. And it has absolutely nothing to do with the law.
Okay.
So for me, like the team scrapes some of my best performing posts on LinkedIn and they put it in there. So it's business centric. But none of it is, hey, here's the 8 things to do after you've been in a car crash, or look at your insurance policy, or here's the latest Virginia Supreme Court decision on contributory negligence, because your clients do not care about that stuff, right? Except when it applies actually to their case. All of what we talk about is things that are going on in our lives outside of the office. So I have a paralegal who fosters kittens, right? She's always talking about the kitten. I have another paralegal. We have a lot of who's a collegiate pole vaulter, and she's competing in amateur leagues after college now. So she talks about that. We talk about the psychology of success as it relates to things like pole vaulting or running or sports or coaching soccer and baseball, which is what I do. So we've got this 8-page thing. None of it talks about the law. Actually, the thing that we get the most comments on is the recipe section. And you know that it works because clients will email you like 7 months later and they're like, hey, I made that recipe. for cookies, and it was a big hit at the party. So the thing is getting opened and read, and that is the goal of the goal of the newsletter, is to be interesting enough that it gets opened every single month instead of thrown in the trash, and to show up every 30 days and just remind your current clients and your past clients and your referral sources that you're still operating a law firm.
I just saw your website. Your newsletter is called Kick Business Glass.
Oh, that's the other one. That's our targeted. That is more business centric. So that's targeted to our business referral sources. And with that one, we said, okay, what do people who are operating small businesses want to know? So that is a little bit more tactical. But the other thing we did with that is we just went into the list and we said, who can we celebritize, right? And that's only got a distribution of like 200, 250 people. But they don't know that. When I call you and I say, hey, I've got this newsletter and I'd like you to contribute an article, and it goes to solo and small business owners in Northern Virginia, can you tell me about your business? You feel like a superhero, right? You don't know that it's only going to 200 people. And it is called Kick Business Glass because my marketing director is super creative, and the G and the L are a different color.
So like, it seems like your relationship and contacts are so essential to your marketing angle, which I think they should be for everybody. Like, how do you put everything in your like legal CRM, or do you have like a non-legal CRM? And like, how do you?
Yeah, that's a wonderful tactical question that I'm not sure that I know the answer to.
Well, I mean,
for a long time,
Lead Docket and another one that you recommend. Yeah,
it's not in Lead Docket or CasePeer. So we used Infusionsoft for a long time. We actually used Infusionsoft as a case management software, if you can believe that, back in the day. And Infusionsoft became Keep, and now I think we manage it all in MailChimp, but I'm not 100% positive.
Okay, yeah. I remember experimenting with Infusionsoft a long time ago. Even like, it was just so robust and overwhelming. Trying to do is anyway, those back in the day. So what are some other marketing tactics or suggestions, or for whether you've had your firm for a while or you're starting up, that you usually suggest?
Yeah. So I think being an important figure in the local community is overlooked, right? So, you can get a backlink from the local Little League, and you can get your banner hung out there for $400. And the way to do that is not just to like print your name on a banner, but it's to show up a little bit differently than everybody else. So we sponsor my CrossFit gym, right? And everybody else there has name of the company, phone number. I'm not sure ours has our phone number. It's got the name of the company, but it's got a picture of my dad and I, and it says, fighting insurance companies is our cardio, right? Just being a little bit different than everybody else. And then as you sponsor, or even like micro sponsor, the elementary school fun run, it's thinking about, how can I turn my $1,000 sponsorship into 7 different pieces of marketing collateral, right? So get your name on the back of the t-shirt, you get the backlink from the PTO, you take a picture of you and your kid and you use it in the newsletter, you take a little video and you put it on your social media. If you have the capability to set up a tent and give away an iPad in exchange for email addresses that'll go on your e-newsletter list, like, that's amazing. And there's always a couple of other things that you can do. So it's just, if you're going to spend $1,000 somewhere, thinking about how can we just put a couple more hours into this project and really leverage it, so that it's not just like, hey, like my name is on the back of some 8-year-old's t-shirt for the rest of the year.
I really love that, because it's sort of like what I say about like recycling content, but you're like, find a way that one thing can be like multiple things. And I agree. Just trying to be creative in that respect. Like, because usually when I'm all like, if I'm going to sponsor my whatever, my kid's old elementary school, something, I'm mostly doing it as like a passion project, like not really because I know I'm going to get a lot of, but I think subliminally, like they're going to see that name, they're going to think about it. But you're right. Like, I feel like I get a lot of leads just from some of my personal social media posts and just being like not too salesy, but then having a sense, a nice touch where, and they're like, oh yeah, she's cool. She does this stuff. Oh yeah, she's also an immigration attorney, that type of thing. I think people underestimate. Yeah, I love that's creative. What other tips do you have for people?
Let's say we're digging into my scraping the bottom of my list. So I'll tell you, one thing that worked for me early in my career is this is I think important for young lawyers, right? If you don't own the firm, the best way for you to make more money is to make the firm more money and to carve out for yourself an origination credit, right? So for me, that looked like anytime we were dispersing a settlement check and there were any doctors that were owed any money, I tried to make it a point to go and hand deliver that check, right? Because nobody else is doing that. And because that might turn somebody who we had one transaction with into a long-term referral source. And so, from my 3rd year of practice through my 10th year, I don't think I got a single raise, but I made more money every single year because of the origination. So I think if you're a young lawyer, like I would be thinking about how can I become, you don't have to go and start your own practice. You can be an entrepreneur and you can make more money for the firm and for yourself within the firm, especially if you're at a place where you like to practice, right? So thinking about how can you start to do marketing and build your own personal brand, without having to do things like go buy PPC or learn how to do SEO, right? Like how can you, as the entrepreneur, start to create these connections with people who might refer you cases in the future by being interesting on LinkedIn or starting a podcast, which is kind of a low barrier to entry thing. Like there's 100 different things you could choose. And you just have to pick one that excites you and that you enjoy working on and just get started and be bad at it for 6 months. And be willing to be embarrassed by the first few episodes. Fine. Like nobody's listening anyway.
Yeah, I teach law practice management at a law school, and I mean, one of the first things I'm like, y'all should have LinkedIn accounts. Like, you just like, seriously, like let's bare minimum entry into this, and then you should also make sure you know all of the people in your class and let them know what area you want to practice and start building your referral network. Because I went to law school out of state from where I practice, and I was always jealous of everybody who went to law school in the same city they practiced because they all had like their best friend referral network from their first section class. And I was like,
yeah,
I had to overcompensate because I didn't have that.
The advice that I give so George Mason University is right in our backyard. And the advice that I give law students, if they ask, is, if you want to go work at big law, fine, right? I think most, well, I don't know most or whatever, but like not everybody wants to go and do that. And nobody is getting a good education from most law schools on how do I get a job at a small firm. And so my advice to 2Ls and 3Ls is you have time. You're not going to be licensed for 12 months, 24 months. Like just start asking if you can take local lawyers to lunch.
Yeah.
Almost no local lawyer is going to let you buy them lunch.
Exactly.
Right? But man, what if you could have 24 lunches over the next year with owners or partners or senior associates in all kinds of different practice areas during your 2L year? You probably would have a pretty good sense of what you wanted to do, right? By the end of that, or at least you would know, man, family law sounds miserable. I don't want to do that, right? And then you would have 24 connections with lawyers so that when you get to 3L year and you don't have a job, you're not going back to these guys and saying, hey, will you hire me? Do you have a position open? It's like, hey, we had lunch last October and I took these 3 things away from it. And you told me to do this, and I did it, and here were my results. I'm in a position now where I'm looking for a job as this kind of lawyer. Do you know anybody that might be hiring somebody like me? Right? Sometimes that lawyer is going to say, yeah, like I'm looking for somebody like you. Usually they're not, but they're going to know somebody who's in the town who's hiring. And if you've made the effort to get out of your law school and make those connections, then you are far more likely to get a job than if you're just like blindly sending your resume and a cover letter on Simplicity or whatever programs they're using.
No, I agree. Like I tell them, like when you're a law student, attorneys don't really see you as competition. They're more willing to mentor you, and yeah, they're not gonna let you pay for them. You ask them to lunch, and then they'll pay for your coffee, or and people love talking about themselves. So just go ask a few questions and let them talk.
Yeah.
We do a networking exercise that actually tonight they're going to report about. Like talk to about 5 attorneys you don't know, and what a little bit about their career, what they wish they would have known going into law school, and some advice that they would impart. And we're going to make everybody in the class teach like the highlights to the rest of the class. So I really enjoy this exercise, but it gets them to do not only public speaking, but it gets them out of their shell and they go talk to other people. And I think I'm trying to teach them that exercise.
That assignment sounds really scary, actually.
Well, I don't care. They need to learn how to do it.
You don't care. I by nature, like I'm fairly introverted, right? So
Really?
that as a law student, that would have scared the shit out of me. But knowing what I know now, if I had that assignment, I would start a podcast and I would interview other lawyers, because now you have permission to be asking those questions, right? It's intimidating to go up to somebody you don't know in the courthouse and go, hey, like, tell me about yourself. What do you know now that you wish you knew then? But if you have a podcast, it's like, I'm just interviewing you, right? I'm not asking for me, I'm asking for the audience.
So I went to a parent wellness talk this morning, and a psychologist was talking about how younger children, it was more for like elementary and middle school, are not really well skilled at like the art of conversation because of the pandemic and what have you. I have an 11 and a 13-year-old. And so she does this exercise. It's like, I talk and then you talk. I talk and then you talk. Or like sometimes I'll text my daughter, she's 11, and she won't respond. And she's like, I got the message. I was like, why don't you respond? She's like, I got the message. Anyway. Yeah. But anyway, just like I see the value of teaching communication, normal relationship dialogue, and I mean, we've got generational changes and everything, but and like you said, some things like this make people feel uncomfortable. But I feel like part of my professor job is to help people get a little bit out of their shell and understand that this is part of it. Because like as we started, you were talking about the importance of relationship building. And actually that's what I talked about was networking at Lex. That's what I was speaking on, and just how it can come in so many different shapes and sizes, whether you're introvert or extrovert, and how many ways you can show up and be genuine in helping, others know what you do and how you can be a help to them.
Yeah. And 100%, one of your jobs as a professor is to get people out of their comfort zone. And for many of those students, if it weren't for that assignment, they would never do it. So I think it's it's a wonderful thing that you're doing. It's just, it would have been scary to me.
Well, I get that. Well, I've had a great time talking with you. And I mean, what are some of the things, how people can like stay in touch with you if they wanted to find out more about everything that you're up to?
So, I mean, easiest place to find me is on LinkedIn, just Brian Glass. I have a podcast called Life Beyond the Briefs. I talk about living a life outside of your legal practice, although lately it's been a lot of legal practice stuff. Those are the 2 best places to find me. And then if you're interested in what we teach at Great Legal Marketing, it's just greatlegalmarketing.com.
Actually, I wanted to ask real quick about LinkedIn, because I've realized this now. It's gotten like, I used to think it was just for people looking for jobs or those helping the people find jobs. But then I was talking to my husband. I was like, when did that change? And he said, when Microsoft took it over a couple of years ago or something. And that's when I realized, yeah, the last couple of years, it's almost like the professional Facebook, and everybody's on it all the time. Or like, how can you do that if you have a normal job? But anyway, How do you leverage LinkedIn, and any tips for those?
It's a great question. So how do I leverage it? I try to post one thing a day.
Okay.
And I've gotten into the habit now that I have the podcast and I have an EA to produce these things. We post collateral about the podcast and about the guest that I don't include in Brian's one thing a day. But really what I just try to talk to the version of myself that's like 3 to 10 years ago. What advice would I have wanted back then? What did I learn today that I could have used 3 to 10 years ago? In either in the business or in family life or in legal cases. And then so that's the content production side. If you were going to get into and if you want to post on LinkedIn, like, you should do it every day, right? I think, at least to start. And you should test what works and what doesn't work, and you should pay attention to your analytics. The challenge with that is you hit this mental block of, I don't have anything interesting to say today. So I use an app called Buffer to schedule, because sometimes I have 4 interesting things to say. I don't want to post 4 times a day. So I'll post it, I'll schedule it for the next day, whatever. And then in terms of leveraging, I get a lot of these inbound connection requests. And if you spend any time on LinkedIn, the one thing that you hate is people who try to sell you stuff in DMs, right? I will almost never cold DM somebody with anything. If I see that you've said something interesting or I want to have you on the podcast, like, I'll do that. But if I get a connection request in, I have my EA do one of 3 things, and he's got auto responses for this. So if it's a law student, we'll send them the episode of the podcast where I talk about what I would do to find a job at a small law firm if I were in their shoes. If it's a lawyer, we send them a link to a free download of our professionally transcribed notes from last year's Great Legal Marketing Summit that has an opt-in to an email list. And and I get these more frequently than anything else, somebody trying to sell stuff to lawyers, I tell them, whatever it is that you're selling, I don't need, but I have this membership group of lawyers, and if you want to get on my email list, then here's the opportunity to get on that. So in that way, you take the lawyers and you take the vendor partners and you try to move them off of the platform, right? Let me get you up and away from LinkedIn and capture the email address and continue to use them. And if you have an email newsletter or something like that, and you can set up a simple landing page for that, I think that's an unobtrusive way to provide value to people if they want it, right? And again, I would never send that to somebody like that I had reached out to, like, hey, let's connect so that you can buy my stuff. But I feel like it's fair game if you reach out to connect to me to send you a link to my thing. So that's how I use it.
That's really brilliant, because the more I've been using it, the more I'm getting a lot more connections on it. And it's like turning into, like, I need someone to be monitoring this a little more regularly. Like, I have a few assistants watching different accounts on LinkedIn, but it's just, I like how you're sort of systemizing it with the different templates and where you're trying to lead people to, because it can be, I can see it almost being like a part-time job to keep it going.
Yeah, he goes in every Wednesday and clears out the connection request. Right. As you do it more and more, what you'll find is, like, I must get 3 a week from legal nurse consultants asking if I know what a legal nurse consultant does and how they can be of value to my practice. Like, stop trying to sell me stuff.
Okay, so the last couple of questions we always ask is, what is your favorite board game or game, and why?
Oh man, I'll tell you what we've been playing a lot of lately. So my boys are 9, 11, and 6. We've been playing a lot of Risk.
Okay. Oh boy.
Which they like. And then the other one that I'll play with the 9 and the 11-year-old is Richard Kiyosaki's cash flow game.
Oh, you're the second person to mention that, actually. I think it was Victoria Collier who mentioned cash flow, which reminds me I need to buy it. Well, about the Risk, does that like turn into like late nights or something, or multiple days? Or you have like a time limit on it?
They are not great strategists.
Oh.
No. Then my kids will attack until they have one army left, and then they will end their turn. So the games don't go terribly long.
Okay, well, look at you. Maybe like when they graduate up to like Catan, I think that's
Yeah.
a good one. Yeah. Oh, I love talking about games. That's fun. Okay, and then what would you say is your superpower and why?
Yeah, I'm pretty good at taking complex issues and simplifying them, right? So, which I think is a great skill for a trial lawyer to have. I had a client once who couldn't understand like why I wasn't getting all of the details right. He was
Mhm.
a lawyer in a past life, and everything that I sent him, discovery or letter or whatever, would come back redlined with all these changes. I finally had to say to him, like, I don't care. My job is to tell stories to juries. So I
Uh-huh.
will not argue with you over, whether there ought to be a comma there. I'll just, if you say so, great. My job is to tell the simplest and the most convincing story that we can. Um, and so I think as an injury lawyer, taking complex legal and complex medical and combining them and explaining to 7 people who don't know anything about either, I think that's a superpower.
No, it definitely is. A handful of guests have mentioned that, and I think that's so valuable, or helping translate complex things to, or to be able to communicate from one group to another, and the what happened to your client to the judge or the jury, like that's essential. Um, Brian, it's been great. We'll definitely have the information in the show notes and let people find ways that you said they can reach you on LinkedIn and get more in touch with you in the future. Any closing thoughts or takeaways or comments?
Nope.
You got this.
You got everything out of me. No, thank you for having me. This is fun. And Ruby, it's so much easier, as you know now, to be on this end of the microphone than on the questioning end of the microphone. So thank you for this.
Oh yeah, no, I get it. It's also fun interviewing a fellow podcaster because it's just a little bit different. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, thanks, Brian. I'm glad we bumped into each other in Utah not too long ago, and we were able to get you on the show. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We learned a lot about marketing and great tips and tricks, and also about like work-life balance from Brian today. Your time and engagement means the world to us. So if you've enjoyed this episode, definitely want to continue the conversation with Power Up Your Practice on the Facebook group. And I think this is the first episode I actually have the book finally in my hands. It's about almost 3 pounds, 714 pages, but it's available on Amazon. So thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Are you feeling overwhelmed by administrative, marketing, or other legal tasks? Well, you're not alone. Many lawyers are in the same boat. They're trying to build up their firm and they're trying to figure out how to get help to do so. So that's where Staffy comes in. So over 90 law firm owners, just like you, have turned to Staffy for help with their legal, administrative, marketing, and client-facing work. Staffy's mission is to help lawyers find balance while growing their firm with bilingual virtual staff and full HR support. And they take the hassle out of the team management and focus on what matters most, your clients and your practice. I've personally benefited from multiple staff support with about 8 virtual assistants over the last few years with my 2 businesses, including my law firm, Power Law Group. Now schedule a free consultation with Staffy. It's stafi.cc, and you can use the code RUBY, that's RUBY, for a $500 off coupon. Thank you for tuning in to the Power Up Your Practice Law Practice Management podcast. I'm your host, Ruby Powers, and it's been a pleasure sharing this time with you. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave us a review, tell someone else about us, and I would love to get this podcast shared with others to reach more listeners like you. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter for exclusive content, tips, and updates straight to your inbox. And exciting news, our book, The Power Up Your Practice, is out and available on Amazon. It's packed with strategies, 25 chapters, to help you elevate your practice and achieve your goals. So join us next week as we dive into more advice and insight on law practice management. We'll see you next time.